Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zeng here, and today I'm bringing you my second VGC 2018 team analysis. If you have not seen the first one I did on the Sand team that I used on Road to Ranked, I highly recommend it. This is basically going to be the exact same kind of video, and as I mentioned, I want to do one of these for each team that I used in VGC 2018. So, of course, this is going to be the Hydreigon team that I used previously on Road to Ranked with the dual Megas. It was a really fun team that I kind of theoremed on, and I actually didn't expect it to do as well as it did on Road to Ranked, so I was pretty happy about it, just because I didn't really test it, and the team definitely had some glaring weaknesses, but overall I had a ton of fun playing with it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed watching it. So if you want to see this team in action, check out Road to Ranked episodes 10 through 19, and of course this video will break down everything that the team had, including the EV spreads, the members of the team, and what I would do to improve the team in the future. Hopefully you guys find these videos helpful. If you do, please share support by leaving a like in the video. I'd really appreciate it. If you haven't seen the Road to Rank from earlier today, I highly recommend it, but just to give you some quick updates, I was on family vacation for the last couple of days, which is why I wasn't able to upload. I'm actually going to Hong Kong later today for winter break for a week and a half to hang out with my college friends, and so I'm pretty busy, but I might be able to get some content done while I'm in Hong Kong, especially because there are some Hong Kong VGC players, and so keep updated on that by following me on social media, Cybertron VGC on Twitter, and so I'll keep you guys updated on that. But regardless, happy holidays guys, and happy new year, which is of course coming up. It also means happy VGC 2018 because we'll be finally switching rule sets. But without further ado, let's just jump into this video. So as always, I kind of like to talk about the team building process before actually jumping into things. So originally when I wanted to build this team, I actually wanted to play around Mega Gardevoir and Amoonguss because I feel like that's a really fun combination. You know, a lot of times you can just Hyper Voice and Rage Powder and kind of just spam Hyper Voice. Mega Gardevoir, of course, does get the Trick Room option as well, so I figured, okay, I kind of want to Trick Room Mega Gardevoir with Amoonguss just because it supports it really well. And of course, Landorus-T, one of the best Pokemon you can add in this format, and back in VGC 2015 as well, because you get Intimidate, but you also get really good typing synergy. So with these three Pokemon, I actually looked at Scar's Worlds 2015 team. For those that don't know, Scar is a really good Japanese player that's qualified for multiple World Championships, and he's played in multiple of them. And I distinctly remember, and people who followed Worlds back in 2015 may remember that Scar was one of the two Mega Gardevoir players in the top 8 that year, and he had all three of these Pokemon, so he was kind enough to post his team report back in 2015, and even though, of course, this isn't the same format and things have changed, I think looking at 2015 spreads is a pretty good reference point, and so I have linked that in the description below, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we look at the team members. But that was a really helpful team report to look at how Mega Gardevoir teams are built and how they synergize. I also wanted a Tailwind option because I feel like Mega Gardevoir and Landorus are Pokemon that could potentially operate under Trick Room, but also work great under Tailwind. Landorus a little bit faster, but Mega Gardevoir is in that speed tier where it's like, okay, if I set up Trick Room, I'll probably outspeed most things that aren't really slow, and if I'm under Tailwind, I'll outspeed everything. So I wanted to try out the Naganadel because I thought that was a really intriguing option. It was also just a newer Pokemon that I haven't played with before, so I figured I would kind of get used to one of the newer Pokemon. It obviously also adds some really nice synergy because of typing. You know, Sludge Bomb gives you a really, really good Fairy coverage. Not that I was too weak to Fairy to begin with, but it's always nice having coverage against things like Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, Tapu Fini, and Tapu Bulu. So that was added to the team. I wanted it instead of something like Zapdos just because I wanted a different option. And then I kind of looked at what other sweepers can take advantage of Tailwind, and I think Charizard Y, Mega Charizard Y, is one of the best Tailwind sweepers in the format because it gets access to, obviously, an incredible ability, but it also gets access to really strong spread attacks, like mainly Heat Wave. So, you know, just under Tailwind, Charizard Y spamming Heat Wave is really strong, especially when you have, obviously, Tailwind up and the Sun up. And so, it might kind of seem kind of weird because most teams typically will only carry one Mega, but I wanted the option of 2 Megas because I thought that they were pretty situational. You know, a lot of the games that you want to bring Gardevoir in, you don't want Charizard, just because of, like, what Gardevoir is good against and what Charizard's good against. And the opposite is true as well. You know, a lot of games where you want Charizard, you don't want Gardevoir. So I felt like it actually made some sense to have both on the team. I haven't really tried it before, but you know, it's also earlier on in the season. I said, okay, I kind of want to just try out as many Megas and Pokemon as I can, and so that actually made some sense to me, and it ended up working out pretty decently, although, you know, originally the team was built around Gardevoir. Charizard definitely ended up being a little bit more common. So finally, I was looking at, first of all, you know, I don't have a Pokemon with the Z move. I also am still really weak to certain things. Like, Cresselia is always one of the biggest things I team build for, just because it's so bulky and it can be such a, you know, threat both offensively and defensively. So I thought about what Pokemon I thought could check Cresselia and other Pokemon like Aegislash, for example, really well. And Hydreigon just seemed to fit this team perfectly. It's a great user of a Dark Z move. It's also kind of fast, so it can take advantage of Tailwind, but also is in the speed tier where it could potentially operate under Trick Room if you're going up against really fast Pokemon. And just, Dark Dragon Fire coverage is really good, especially with Fire Blast. You can take advantage of Charizard-wise Drought, and so that's how I closed out the team. So overall, it kind of actually started like a VGC 2015 team, and then I built around it by adding some members that I thought would fit it really, really well. So, going into the EV spreads and the breakdown of the team, I actually decided to just take the spreads that Scar, so full credit to him, had built in 2015, just because I was really not sure what to EV for in this format, and I kind of wanted to say, okay, let me use this as a starting point and then figure out what exactly I would adjust. So, this was Scar's spread from back in 2015. The idea behind it is that you don't have too much speed because you want to, I think it outsped Bisharp back then, but it would be slower than everything else. So the idea is under Trick Room, you would actually still outspeed pretty much like most of the common Pokemon in the format. And I thought this spread made a lot of sense, specifically for this team, since I do have the Tailwind option as well, so I don't really need the speed, and if I'd be going up against other Mega Gardevoirs, then I would outspeed them if Trick Room were up. So this one's really bulky. You see max HP and a lot of defense, and then the rest pumped into special attack. Mega Gardevoir's moveset, very straightforward. You're pretty much always going to want to run Hyper Voice, Psychic, Trick Room, and Protect. You could opt for something over Trick Room. That's pretty much the room for debate, but otherwise, yeah, pretty straightforward. And I thought this spread was a really good starting point just because I didn't know how fast I wanted Gardevoir to be, and I figured, okay, if it's in that tier where I don't really need any investment and it'll still outspeed everything under Tailwind, then might as well just go for a spread that has a little bit more bulk. If anything, you could, maybe could have taken some EVs out of defense actually and put them into special attack, but overall, I really like the spread and what it set out to do. Next spread was Amoonguss. This one just opts for pretty much maximum bulk on the defensive spectrum because you want to cover Mega Kangaskhan's, especially with Rocky Helmet. But you have this one special defense investment as well to help you take attacks like Psychic and Ice Beam. Pretty straightforward. The only change here is that I opted for Sludge Bomb over Giga Drain just to give me some more coverage against fairies, more specifically Tapu Lele, Tapu Koko, Tapu Bulu, Tapu Fini, just because Giga Drain you don't heal too much and you don't do too much damage with it anyway. Overall, it didn't feel like something that was a major component to the team. I feel like I could have played with either, but it was cool just trying out the Sludge Bomb option, especially because of the pressure it puts on against the fairies. If anything, you could consider maybe a bulky berry on Amoonguss or a leftover / black sludge, but the Rocky Helmet's kind of nice just because it makes my Kangaskhan matchup a lot easier. A lot of times I can just switch Amoonguss into a fake out and Kangaskhan would take like 40% of damage, and so that was really, really nice. Pretty straightforward. And with the Amoonguss, typically you can either go, bold with a lot of HP and defense, or sassy with a lot of special defense instead of defense. So it's pretty much, how you want the Amoonguss to be built. You always pretty much want max HP, but depending on the team and what you're trying to cover, you can move some EVs out of defense for special defense and change the nature. But more or less, the Amoonguss pretty much always does the same thing, where you have Rage Powder and Spore to really help out your team. Next member is the Landorus-T form. So basically, this is Assault Vest, but I just opted for Scar set with max attack and max speed, and that is because I felt like I really didn't know exactly what I'd want to EV for in this format, and basically the logic behind this was I was thinking, okay, for this team, for Landorus with Assault Vest, I just want to be able to survive at least one Ice Beam, and you can do that pretty much if you just have an Assault Vest. You don't really need any HP or special defense investment. I also wanted to hit as hard as possible still, just because Landorus is a really big offensive juggernaut, and I don't like Assault Vest spreads where you have like very little attack, because yeah, you're bulky, yeah, you can recycle Intimidate, but then you're just not doing very much damage. And for me, one of the Landorus's best things is its ability to consistently put out damage and do super effective damage. So I also went for the same set let Scar use that Worlds in 2015 because I thought it fit the team really well. Rock Tomb gives me really nice coverage because I've got the Charizard in the back and the Hydreigon, so it gives me another means of speed control. Earthquake and Rock Slide are pretty self-explanatory for Landorus, and then U-Turn just allows you to cycle in Intimidate and go through. So yeah, like overall, the one thing that really makes this set different is obviously the Rock Tomb, but Scar used it in Worlds in 2015, and I thought it made a lot of sense on this team as well, specifically because of the Charizard and the Hydreigon, which we did see come into play a decent amount. So obviously, if you wanted to adjust this spread, you could put a lot more into bulk. You could also take some out of speed, but having the speed is nice insurance just against other Landoruses that might be a little bit more bulky. Next Pokemon was the Nganadel. For this one, I opted for a Modest Nature because I wanted to get the special attack for Beast Boost instead of Speed, and I opted for a pretty simple moveset of Tailwind, Sludge Bomb, HP Ice, and Protect. The Protect is nice because you can potentially blow Fake Outs from things like Mega Kangaskhan or Incineroar or Ludicolo on the first turn, which means you can conserve your Focus Sash. You can also just scout out for attacks. Tailwind is obviously what this was built for, as well as Sludge Bomb. For the filler move, I decided for HP Ice because it gives me some nicer coverage against Landorus, which I thought would, gave my team a fair amount of trouble, especially if you look at the fact that if I play with the Naganadel, Hydreigon, Charizard mode, then obviously Landorus is really annoying to deal with. So with modest HPIs, you can pretty much always knock them out as long as they don't have an Assault Vest or a Yache Berry. And even if they have Assault Vest, I mean, you're still doing like 60-70%, which is really nice because that plus a Heat Wave from Charizard or a Dark Pulse is enough to knock it out. So also a pretty straightforward moveset. Only difference is that I opted for Modest instead of Timid, which means you are getting outsped by a couple of things like Mega Salamence, let's max speed, a Mega Metagross, let's max speed, for example. But other than that, a couple of situational key points, I thought the Modest was pretty nice, especially because getting the special attack Beast Boost is super, super strong. Of course, an alternative could be to use Timid, but just not run as much speed, so you still outspeed things, but also get the Beast Boost. But one of the other reasons why I ran Modest was because I feel like this just really doesn't do too much damage when you're Timid, so the extra like 10% that you get from Modest is actually really, really nice, especially against things like Tapu Lele and Tapu Fini. So yeah, and Landorus actually. So it turns some KOs that would normally be 2-hit KOs into 1-hit KOs if they're not bulky. Next Pokemon was Mega Charizard Y. So this spread was also adapted from Ryosuke Kosuge, who is a Japanese player back from Worlds in 2014, because I was just looking for a spread that was bulky enough to survive generic attacks. And so it's not optimized, and I think if I would optimize, I would actually take EVs out of speed and put more into defense for potentially Landorus's Rock Slides, and some into special attack as well, just to hit a little bit harder. But overall, the moveset is pretty straightforward of Overheat, Heat Wave, and Solar Beam. That's pretty much the same moveset you always want to go with for Charizard. But you can obviously opt for something like Tailwind or Hidden Power or even Air Slash or Focus Blast, as we've seen. But moveset pretty self-explanatory as well as Modest. So yeah, I wasn't too creative with my spreads. I just decided to go with spreads that have proven to work instead of trying to create something really fancy. And then I figured I'd give you guys my personal thoughts on how you could adjust it for this team specifically. So for this one, like Ryosuke ended up with a lot of speed because he wanted to outspeed, I believe it was like Smeargle. Just because obviously Smeargle this was from VGC 2014, by the way. Smeargle in 2014 was kind of scary, and then the EV spread allowed it to survive Specs Draco Meteor from Hydreigon. So obviously that's not a benchmark that's too important, and with the HP and defense, it could survive Rock Slide from Garchomp with spread damage. And so those aren't like the biggest benchmarks to survive for. So I think if I would adjust the spread, I actually basically would take EVs out of speed and put them into everything else, right? Just because you don't really need too much speed investment with Charizard, especially if you have the Tailwind option. Although the speed was nice because when going up against like other Charizards and Landoruses, a lot of times I would be faster. So people were like, oh, what's the EV spread of Charizard? This is one that got top 8 at the World Championships in 2014, so thank you to Ryosuke for creating it. It's not adjusted for VGC 2018, but like I mentioned just a couple of ways earlier, I would probably just take some out of speed and put more into like HP and defense. Like I didn't feel like I really missed the special attack investment at any point, but obviously the more special attack you have, every time you spam Heat Wave, you're doing more damage. And the last Pokemon, of course, was Hydreigon. Nothing too creative about this moveset, and the EV spread I wanted to just hit as hard as possible with max special attack and max speed, running the Dark Z move, just obviously to dunk on things like Cresselia and Aegislash. But the Dark Z move from Hydreigon is one of the strongest Z moves you can use, in the sense that there are very few things that can really safely switch into, and obviously not that many Pokemon can take Dark Z, or just Dark attacks in general very well. So a lot of times Hydreigon would be able to be in a position where it's like even if you switch into something, you're still taking some chip damage of like 25 to 30%. That's really good. I think Hydreigon is severely underrated for VGC 2018, and I would highly recommend it. You obviously have to protect it well from fairies, but on this team, with Naganadel, with Amoonguss, and with Charizard, there's a lot of anti-fairy kind of modes on this. So I felt like I was never too scared of fairies, especially because most were slower. Tapu Koko was the one I was like typically concerned of, as well as Scarf Tapu Lele, but as you can see from Road to Ranked, I had ways to play around those. Moveset, pretty self-explanatory. I opted for Fire Blast just because it does more damage, and instead of the more consistent Flamethrower. And also with the Sun boost from Charizard, Fire Blast just does a lot in very specific scenarios. I didn't really use that too much, but you typically want a Fire type attack just for coverage, especially against things like Amoonguss or Ferrothorn. So yeah, that's pretty much the team. So the EV spreads, like I mentioned, they were all adapted from 2 Japanese players, Ryosuke Kosuge, who got top 8 at Worlds in 2014, and then Scar, who got top 8 at Worlds in 2015. So the reason being, I just really did not know how I would try to make these spreads better, so I was like, okay, let me just use spreads that have been successful and then figure out how I would adjust it. So I kind of talked about how I would adjust it, but playing with the team, and I'll talk a little bit more about adjustments in the next part, but in terms of how you want to play with the team, the 2 leads I found myself going with the most commonly were Naganadel Hydreigon. The first one, this was by far the most common lead, and it's because it has really good coverage overall. Hydreigon just puts on so much offensive pressure immediately, whereas Naganadel also has the Tailwind pressure, so just overall, here's something like can nuke things immediately, plus something like can Tailwind. Similarly, with Landorus, I have the Tailwind threat, but this time I get a quick Intimidate off. That's really good against physical-based teams, especially ones with Mega Kangaskhan. Otherwise, the leads were completely situational. Actually, on Road to Ranked, I used 10 different leads with this team, which is typically pretty rare. I think a lot of teams I use typically, I'll have 2 or 3 leads that are really consistent, and then maybe 1 or 2 other ones that I'll go with occasionally. This team, really, you could go with anything, so it's very, very dependent on your opponent's team, and I thought it was pretty interesting that there were 10 different leads that I used with this team in general. There are 2 different modes that I would play with this team typically, either an early game Tailwind in which Naganadel would set up, or kind of a mid-game Trick Room where I get Mega Gardevoir out and set up Trick Room in the mid game instead of just immediately setting up Trick Room. Obviously, with the 2 different modes, you could also go with the Charizard Y or Gardevoir, so choosing your Mega is very important. And because there's so many options, it's really important that you break down your opponent's team. That is really, really crucial to playing with it, because you need to identify basically which 4 are the best Pokemon to bring. And obviously, that's the case for any match in VGC, or any team in VGC, but especially when you're playing with 2 Mega Evolutions, it's a lot more, I would say, not difficult, but you just got to think a little bit more, just because Gardevoir and Charizard are both really strong Megas, but figuring out which one to bring in the right matchup is a really, really big decision, because that makes or breaks a lot of games. So that's kind of just some tips on playing with the team. Obviously, if you want to see in action, check out the Road to Ranked episodes, as I mentioned. So future considerations, like I mentioned, since I adapted these EV spreads, or a bunch of them, what would I do differently? Well, with Gardevoir, I would probably add maybe more special attack. You could also add more speed and not get rid of the Trick Room option, but I like the Trick Room option because, 1, I can cancel Trick Room on my opponent's end. That's actually a really big deal, running Trick Room just to stop my opponent's Trick Room. And it also gives me, however, a mode with Gardevoir and Amoonguss. And so, honestly, if anything, I would maybe take the EVs out of defense and just put them into special attack and just go max HP, max special attack. But the defensive bulk was nice because it helps out a lot. Gardevoir's defense is pretty bad, and so with the Intimidate from Landorus, you get to really help the team out. So there's a reason why this spread worked out really well, and I would honestly probably stick with the same spread. The only adjustment is taking some EVs out of defense into special attack. But you, of course, could always consider running more speed and no Trick Room. With Amoonguss, like I mentioned, you could run Sassy or Calm and run more special defense instead of defense, but I think defense is better on Amoonguss overall, just because you're bulky enough where you can take Psychics and Ice Beams from non-stab Pokemon anyway, and even Cresselia doesn't do too much to you, and then you can just heal back with Regenerator. Whereas Kangaskhan, Kangaskhan in general is just really annoying, so having the extra defense goes a huge way against it. Of course, you could run Giga Drain, as I mentioned, or another item like a berry or an item, a berry or a recovery item in general. But Rocky Helmet, since I think I wanted to have more Kangaskhan hate on this team, ended up helping out a lot. With Landorus, as I mentioned as well, Rock Tomb was the one interesting move on it, so you could get rid of that for Knockoff, Stone Edge, Explosion are all options, although I wouldn't run Explosion on Assault Vest Landorus, but Knockoff is probably the biggest one I considered, just because getting rid of Cresselia's berry is really big, or getting rid of any berry in this format is huge. Also, just being able to do more damage against Aegislash and not worrying about Wide Guard is really nice. Stone Edge is a stronger alternative to just guarantee you getting big knockouts, but Rock Tomb knocks out Charizard anyway, which is why I stuck with it. Finally, for the EV spread, you could go with more bulk, but honestly, I love Assault Vest Landorus with no bulk, just because you still survive everything anyway. At most, you get 2-shot by it, and you do the most damage possible. If anything, I would probably just take EVs out of speed and put it in bulk, but I think max attack is still really, really nice with AV Landorus. With the Naganadel, like I mentioned, you could go with Timid, but with more special attack investment than speed to make sure that you get the Beast Boost from the special attack. So That's like the one change you would make. I think for this team, I really love the set. Obviously, you could always consider running like Snarl, Hidden Power Ground. Hidden Power Ground is actually something I'd maybe consider just because Heatran gave this team a lot of trouble. But otherwise, yeah. Nagano, I feel like, is a relatively straightforward Pokemon where you typically want to run like Sash, maybe Life Orb, maybe Poison Z. But Tailwind, Sludge Bomb are kind of feel like necessities, and then Snarl, Hidden Power are all possibilities as well. With Charizard, you could run more EVs in special attack and defense and then less in speed, which is pretty much what I mentioned. Ryosuke said, for his Worlds report in 2014, which is also linked in the description below, by the way, that he felt like, the speed stat was kind of awkward and he didn't really know where to go with it. And so, yeah, he, I think, used it just to outspeed a bunch of benchmarks in 2014, but it ended up being kind of not that useful. But keep in mind, anytime you run speed into Mega, like, that means that you are potentially outspeeding other Mega Evolutions. And we did see that come into play where I'd outspeed other Charizards, and so the spread overall, like, there are a bunch of ways you can change it. Charizard's one of those Pokemon where you can build it in so many different ways with your EV spread. But for this team, I feel like the spread actually worked out really nicely. I would probably just, put a little bit more in special attack and defense, especially defense, just because, Landorus's Rock Slides are a little bit stronger than Garchomp's Rock Slides. And this spread was designed for Garchomp Rock Slides. So having a little bit more insurance against Landorus would be nice. Obviously, we could consider more offensive moves like Flamethrower or Tailwind as well. But I feel like for this, Overheat, Heat Wave, Solar Beam was perfect. And finally, Hydreigon. There's not a single thing I would change about Hydreigon on this team specifically, but if you wanted to use Hydreigon in VGC 2018 in general, you pretty much always want to run, I would say, Modest or Timid. And then with the moveset, you can run, Specs, Life Orb, Z move. Those are the main ones I'd use. You could consider Choice Scarf as well, but I feel like Choice Scarf just gives up a lot of the firepower that you have with Hydreigon. And obviously, you could adjust the move pool as well. So those are the changes I would make. In the end, I thought the spreads that I had adapted from the top players were actually really strong, and there weren't too many adjustments I would make in terms of spreads. If I would make changes, it would be to the team overall, just because I felt like there were some fundamental weaknesses, which I'll talk about now. So, in terms of weaknesses, I mean, one of the biggest ones was Hydreigon's Z move, not using it at the most optimal time. For example, being really scared of Cresselia switching out, expecting my Z move, for Aegislash switching out, expecting my Z move. That was always kind of annoying, like, in the early game, because I like leading with Hydreigon. So, even though, if you lead with Hydreigon, you have the Z move pressure, but then you also have more mind games on whether or not to use it, whereas if you conserve it in the late game, for example, Hydreigon against Cresselia that can't switch out, then you can get the guaranteed Z move off. So, that was pretty tough, and it made a lot of tough decision making. Not utilizing Tailwind well was also definitely a problem, because I have some, like, for example, Charizard is bulkier, neither Charizard nor Gardevoir are max special attack, so I don't do as much damage, and so if Tailwind would expire, I would often just get outsped afterwards, which was a problem because, Charizard, Gardevoir, not the fastest Pokemon, slower than things like Kangaskhan or Landorus. Amoonguss, when you do bring it, anytime you use Amoonguss on a team, you always have to be careful because it can be dead weight, so it's the same for this team. It's a really great support Pokemon, but you have to worry a little bit more, especially in VGC 2018, now that, electric terrain and misty terrain are things as well. Naganadel also could often become dead weight after setting up Tail Wound, which we would occasionally see, where it's like, okay, Sludge Bomb doesn't do too much, Hidden Power Ice doesn't do too much, it's just kind of sitting around. I would rather get a free switch in, but, what do I really do? Because I'm basically wasting a turn of Tail Wound with it out, and so that's dependent on what your opponent's team is, but you just have to play properly and make sure you utilize Tail Wind well. The reliance of spread attacks can be a little bit scary as well, just because, Hyper Voice, Heat Wave, for example, Earthquake, those are all moves that can be blocked by Wide Guard. Now, there aren't too many great Wide Guard users that we've seen in prominence right now in the format, but Aegislash being one of them was a big deal. Because of the reliance of spread attacks, I had Overheat and Dark Pulse with the Z move on Hydreigon, just to have 2 ways to nuke Aegislash, should it choose a Wide Guard. And finally, Heatran. Heatran was a problem in general. Like, I got wrecked in one of the games on Road to Rank because I literally had nothing for Heatran. My only way to really beat Heatran is Landorus' Earthquake or Dark Z move from Hydreigon, plus like a little bit of chip damage from other things. Amoonguss can't really do anything to it. Naganadel really can't touch it. Gardevoir really can't touch it. Charizard really can't touch it. So, it's not good being weak to one of the strongest Pokemon in the format. Heatran is really good. It was really good in 2015, still really good nowadays. And so, if I had to adjust the team, I'd maybe honestly reconsider the Gardevoir Amoonguss core. If anything specifically, I'd maybe consider replacing Amoonguss, just because, yeah, like, the redirection is nice, but Amoonguss is a lot weaker than it was back in 2015, especially because, like I mentioned, the terrains. So I'd probably get rid of Amoonguss for either, like, another support Pokemon, Cresselia could be interesting to look into because it gets access to Helping Hand, or you could go for an offensive option as well. But overall, yeah, I think this team had some pretty clear weaknesses, and that definitely shined in my losses on Road to Ranked, but it was really, really fun to use. And I think it was also pretty cool for me to try out like some spreads from 2015 because it was like, oh wow, we're playing a different format, but these spreads are still a really good benchmark and base to use. And so honestly, I really recommend, like, if you're feeling lost with a Pokemon, go to Nugget Bridge and look at their archives for team reports from 2015 because you get so much information and there's so many spreads available from back then. So using that as a benchmark and then adjusting it based off this current format, I think is a really good way to go too, once you figure out like what you want to specifically EV to survive for. Just because there's so many Pokemon in this format now and so many different moves that it's not like older years where it's like, okay, I have like one strong move that everything should be EV to survive for, like Dragon Gem Draco Meteor from Latios in 2013, or Specs Hydreigon Draco Meteor from 2014, for example. So yeah, like, I think that, like, in the team building process, you should definitely feel free to try out older spreads and kind of adjust them as you go. So that's pretty much it for this team. I had a really fun time using the team, and like I mentioned, it honestly did a little bit better than I expected because I was like, I have no idea how this is going to work or not. And it's kind of funny because it turned from a Gardevoir Amoonguss team to me not really using Gardevoir that much at all. Yeah, if anything, if you wanted to replace two Pokemon on the team, I would probably recommend Gardevoir Amoonguss just because they were used a lot less frequently than the other members of the team, but they definitely were really good in some matchups as well. So yeah, it's definitely not the easiest team to use. If you fall behind, it's really hard, and you do have to make some good calls, and you know, hitting like Heat Wave, for example, and Overheat, that's a really big deal anytime you use Charizard. But overall, I think the team is just a fun team to try out Naganadel with, and in general, it's kind of cool to use two Megas. And I think Hydreigon, just, you know, by far being the MVP of the team, was surprising to me, although it was also really cool to see, just because it was the last member added to the team. So it wasn't what I built the team around, but it ended up being pretty much the best Pokemon that the team had to offer. So if anything, this team kind of demonstrates how you can build properly around Hydreigon and really support it in VGC 2018. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this team report. Like I mentioned, there is a paste for this for Showdown, as well as a QR code available in the description below. So happy holidays to you guys. You can feel free to try those out, as well as my Sand team, which I uploaded an analysis of previously. And as I mentioned, I'll do these as much as I can for every team I use in Road to Ranked and just in VGC 2018 in general. So yeah, happy holidays, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. As always, if you did, please share support by leaving a like in the video, and I'll catch you guys next time. All right, peace.